Hi, it's Neil. This is an old Harry Nilsson record from my collection, and if I asked you what would be the most interesting thing inside this sleeve, most likely you would say the record. But you would be wrong, because when you bought this album back in the day, Harry Nilsson wanted to give you something else. He wanted to give you a chance to make your own Harry Nilsson t-shirt with an iron-on transfer that was included. Mine's still here, and I never used it, which raises a more interesting question. What if the most valuable thing in your record is not the record? The collectibles, like the one I just showed you, became valuable because you weren't supposed to collect them. They were actually supposed to be used. So today we're going to take a look inside of some album covers. And the things that record companies gave you for free, in many cases, are now worth more than the actual records that they came with. And a lot of these items are completely nuts. Well, not everything that you got inside of an album was silly. In fact, in some cases, what you got as a free extra item was historic. The one that bothers me the most would be Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits album from 1966, which included a copy of the acclaimed portrait of Bob Dylan by artist Milton Glaser. That poster can now be seen in the Museum of Modern Art. I used to have it, and that drives me crazy. But what did you do with a poster back in those days? You put thumbtacks in it and you hung it up on your wall, which I did, and I don't know whatever happened to it from there. Here's another one that I actually still own. Alice Cooper's School's Out. I have the album, but I don't have the underwear. And for those of you that may not know it, this album was released with a pair of paper panties wrapped around the record. Interestingly, the part 2 to this story was that U.S. Customs seized about 500,000 copies of the album because they considered the panties to be in violation of fire fabric laws. So let's wrap this up. We've got a story here involving federal agents, 500,000 confiscated pairs of panties, Warner Brothers arguing in court what constitutes the definition of underwear, and a nationally respected newspaper documenting all of this, not to mention Alice Cooper making a joke about spontaneous combustion. You really can't make this stuff up. Isn't record collecting a fun hobby? Moving along, some record companies spend a fortune creating elaborate album covers, but Grand Funk Railroad had another solution. They made you put on the 3D glasses, rather than the expense of a 3D lenticular photo on the cover. Original copies of their Shinin' On LP actually came with the glasses built right into the cover. And guess what's often missing from used copies today? The glasses. And the package also included a 3D poster. America's comedy stoners, Cheech and Chong, included a free item in their Big Bamboo comedy album that came as a natural idea to them. They included a giant rolling paper for fans. And it's very hard to find a copy of the album with the rolling paper included. I laughed at a social media comment I read from a fan talking to a hopeful collector of the album. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is record collecting. Here's an example of a freebie included with an album that is hard to put a monetary price on, because the extra wasn't merely valuable, it turned the record buyer into part of the next record. Todd Rundgren's album, A Wizard, a True Star, included a postcard inviting purchasers to send in their names, and the names were subsequently used to create an enormous portrait poster included with Todd's next album, the 1974 double album Todd. The image was generated from thousands of submitted names using computer technology, which was pretty exotic in the early 1970s when this happened. My name was right above Todd Rundgren's eyebrow, and you know what? It made me a Todd Rundgren fan for life. Rundgren's brilliant idea for bonding with fans wasn't created to become a collectible. It was created to make buying the record an experience. Before we move on to discuss a few album freebies that you would always want to hold on to, here's a last goofy one. That would be the vinyl reissue of Mort Garson's 1976 album of Moog music for plants called Mother Earth's Plantasia. The album included a download card embedded with wildflower seeds. You could grow your own plants. And many album buyers have verified their agricultural success online using these seeds. So, as we come down the home stretch on our conversation about the amusing or valuable things that you might sometimes get in one of your records, there's also a couple of examples of extremely valuable things you can get inside of a record that also have a direct connection to the performer in the record you purchased. I've got a couple of examples. Let's start with this one. Bill Wyman, former bassist for the Rolling Stones and a guy that carved out a pretty successful solo career, provided a hand-signed photo in his box set that I'm showing you. This is not only something that can be authenticated by looking at it carefully under a big magnifying glass or high-intensity lamp, but Bill himself verifies it's a real signature on his website. And he does do this from time to time on various LP releases sold from his site. Another example that I'm particularly happy to have in my own collection would be a deluxe box set from Robbie Robertson, formerly of the band, called How to Become Clairvoyant. This is a very deluxe set, and at least in terms of the box sets I'm aware of and have seen, this is the Rolls Royce of box sets. It's so beautifully done. It's constructed in two big chapters. One, the music, and two, the art. And there's quite a rich combination of both. This is personally hand-signed by Robbie Robertson. No doubt about it, streaming has given us something very extraordinary. The ability to enjoy whatever music we like, whenever we like, and wherever we like. But still, there's nothing like opening up a vinyl LP and seeing something in there that you didn't quite expect. It could be an autograph, it could be something to wear, it could be something to plant, or in Todd Rundgren's case, it could be your own name. Well, maybe that's why we love these things so much. So, what did I miss? I would certainly love to hear your comments about treasures you may have found with your records. Please feel free to join in. Sometimes a record wasn't just all about the music. Sometimes it was an experience. And sometimes, 50 years later, the things that you were given for free inside of an album turn out to be worth more than the actual album itself. Just remember, every record tells a story, and sometimes you might have to look inside the jacket to find it. Well, we plan to bring you plenty more stories. We hope to see you again, and please support our channel by subscribing. Thank you.